Hey, all right, well, welcome to the LightTwist Show, where we spotlight the most exciting builders and creators in virtual production, computer vision, and spatial computing. I'm Vikas Reddy, founder of LightTwist.
And I'm Phil Nelson, the co-host with the co-most, the second banana who is second to none, your plus one and only. And Vikas, it seems like our guest this week is an old interweb chum of mine. Is that so?
I believe so. That's right. We're really happy to have Will Smith, co-host of Brad and Will Made a Tech Pod, as well as FossPod. You may remember Will from his days at Tested.com and the early VR chat show, the Foo Show.
Yeah, we'll also be hearing about Anacrusis, a game from Stray Bombay, which Will does comms for, an awesome 4-player co-op game. There's not nearly enough of those. But first, Vikas, what do we got?
Hey, thanks for having me, guys. It's good to be here. This is a little bit different than we used to do it, but I feel like I'm inside the Phantom Zone here. But it's very cool.
Yeah.
You're trapped in a screen for now, but yeah, maybe if we have you on next time, we'll have you physically in the studio, like Phil and I.
Definitely out.
You are one, but we are two.
I am super curious about how all that stuff, how the sausage is made. So always cool to see that.
Thank you. Yeah. So for the LightTwist Show, we always start off with 7 questions, and so this is just to get to know you better, Will, and there's a little bit of a replicant test in there too, just in case. So we'll start off.
Gotta be safe.
So what's in your pockets?
Oh, what's in my pockets? Hold on. Oh wow. It's okay. So it's true story. It's 9:00 in the morning right now, guys. There's nothing in my pockets. I don't even have chapstick. I'm completely empty.
All right, great. What was the last TV show you watched?
Netflix's Sandman, which is emotionally impacting and impactful and very good. Everybody should watch Sandman.
I just started watching it. It's so great. All right, so if you were a cyborg, what would be your optimal machine to human ratio?
Oh, man. Oh, so I used to play a character called the Armless Wonder who replaced his human arms with robot arms, but then superpowered robot arms. But it turns out if you don't have a superpowered robot frame, the robot arms are kind of not a good thing for you. So they just ended up being like normal arms that look like a robot. So I'm going to say 0.1% probably. A very low cyborg factor for me.
Wow. Is that by weight or by volume?
Let's say volume.
Okay.
Yeah. Inner ear implants, maybe. I want super hearing.
Cochlear implants.
Yeah. What was your first job, Will?
My first job was selling bookmarks to churches with John 3:16 on them. I was not particularly successful at it. I called every church in Northeast Tennessee over the course of a summer, and I sold maybe 50 or 100 bookmarks to them. They immediately sussed me out, and they realized that I was not doing the work that the Lord intended, I guess. So,
those can't have been high dollar items either. You know?
I think that the bookmarks were 10 cents each, but I'm not sure. I probably paid for gas driving back and forth to work over a period of 5 days in that 3 months. So
yeah. That's awesome. All right, so invisibility or power of flight?
Oh, power of flight for sure. Invisibility, look, if you say invisibility here, maybe it's a little creepy, but flight, think about how fast your commute is. If you just zoop and then back down, piece of cake.
Go there. That's true.
I think the non-perverted uses of invisibility are slim.
That's true. Yeah, maybe we should swap it for a different power. Is a hot dog a sandwich, Will?
Are you eating it on a bun?
Yes. Oh, good question. Yes.
So if there's a bun with 2 things between it, I'm firmly in sandwich. Like if you take 2 pieces of pizza and smash them cheese side together, that's a sandwich.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Okay, good to know. All right, so this is the replicant test here. So it's just standard test we do here on the LightTwist Show. So, all right, so Will, you're in a desert walking along in the sand when all of a sudden you look down and see a tortoise. It's crawling toward you. You reach down and flip the tortoise over on its back. The tortoise lays on its back, its belly baking in the hot sun, beating its legs, trying to turn itself over. But it can't, not without your help. But you're not helping. Why is that?
What's a tortoise, Vikas?
Oh man, that's
they're onto us. I feel like
it's the year 2022 now. There are tortoises, so I would expect a human to know about a tortoise potentially.
Oh no.
Okay,
Inconclusive.
It's like a turtle. It's like a turtle.
Oh,
There's the
so
one.
you know, reptile overlords. I'm a mammal guy through and through is my answer. So,
all right.
sorry,
That's actually,
reptiles.
That's a pretty interesting answer because yeah, I mean that's
Is
shows strong
that what a
affinity for
mammal guy would
mammals.
say?
All right, I'm gonna say pass for this time. What do you think?
All
What do you
right.
think, Phil?
Yeah. I think we need a board like, survey says.
Yeah,
We can
that's
throw
actually a
up
good
there.
idea. Actually, it's good. Yeah, we'll do that for the next show, perhaps. All right. Well, so next on the show, we're going to take a look at the new update for Anacrusis from the game studio Stray Bombay, who Will works with. So the Anacrusis moderately extravagant update trailer. So here, I'll play this here.
And so Anacrusis is a 4-player cooperative shooter. It's got a similar AI sort of director to the Left 4 Dead series. Would you like to talk us through what we're seeing here, Will?
Yeah, so this was our fifth and most recent major update. It's called the moderately extravagant update because we added mod support and modified weapons to it. So the idea is that we took what Valve was able to do with games like Left 4 Dead in the 10 or 12 years ago at this point. And we're applying more kind of AI to what the director can do. So where, in the previous games, the director just placed spawned enemies rather. Now the game's aware of how the players are doing, how they're playing, like how much stress they're under, and it spawns enemies, weapons, and in some cases even more to kind of, I don't want to say manipulate, but the idea is that any team composition can get a pretty intense or desired intensity game. And yeah, like the upshot is that I can play with my 9-year-old daughter. We can have a great game and have a lot of fun. And it's challenging for both of us. But if I go in with a bunch of my first-person shooter murder cronies, we get a really intense.
Your elite gang.
Yes, my elite gang of PUBG and Fortnite players. We get a pretty intense game. So
I'm scared to play with y'all. I see you on the stream every now and again, and I'm like, I just don't think I've got what it takes.
Look, what it takes is spending a few thousand hours over about 5 years, every night, 4 to 6 hours, and just you just got to get good, Phil. That's all there is to it.
That's exactly what I mean, Will.
But the Anacrusis is out now on Xbox, Steam, and Game Pass as well. So
that's awesome. And just a quick question on that one is like, were there any like interesting challenges during this release? Like, was it
any hurdles?
Were there any interesting like
well, I mean, it's making games.
Yeah.
So games, I've worked with game tools for a long time, but making games is a whole different world of challenge, it turns out. Because all games are, it's a miracle that any game ever ships, much less the studio. So I joined Stray Bombay in May of 2021. The studio opened at the end of 2019. So basically they were open for a little bit. The pandemic started. We went from being in the office in Seattle company to a virtual company overnight, basically. And somehow we managed to ship a game in 2 years and a few months, basically, into early access, which feels like just getting the game out feels like an accomplishment in that kind of condition.
Yeah.
But I mean, the big thing to me is listening to the community, listening to what folks want to do, what they're looking for from the game, what they want from the game, what they find too easy, what they find too hard, what they want more of, what they want less of, and then kind of collating all of that feedback into something that's usable and actionable for the team to go work on, which has been really fun. It's been a completely different challenge than anything I've done before.
That's great. Awesome. Yeah, and the mod support is obviously huge because it's the difference between. It essentially gives the game, infinite legs. Once you've got really good mod support and it's the community, there's decent docs and they know how to use it. The game no longer really has a time when there's an end date on it. People will still keep making content for it for years.
That's exactly it. I mean, so Chet Falasek, who's my boss, was the lead on Left 4 Dead and Left 4 Dead 2 at Valve, and he saw that with the Left 4 Dead series. The thing that we've found, so one of the nice things about working at a small company is that we can do something really crazy, like recruit some modders and say, hey, do you all want to make stuff for the game? You pre-release, and just give them access to our Perforce. So we brought in a handful of folks and said, look, we're learning how Unreal modding works. Here's what we think is the best practice. We're going to just get you guys in here so you can start building stuff on day one, not day one, but a year before release almost. What ended up happening was those people helped us dog food the tool chain. And so now we have a beta release of a more a more traditional mod tool pipeline out that's on the Epic Store right now.
Nice.
If you want access to that, people can join our Discord at discord.gg/Stray Bombay, and there's instructions when you join that tell you how to sign up for that. But we have like 50 people actively working on content for the game because it turns out there's people have been making mods for Left 4 Dead for the last 12 years, and they're ready to build in other worlds. It turns out. So, it's been really fun. It's been exciting to watch the community latch onto the game and figure it out, find out what we love about it.
And the setting is very interesting as well, because it's not I haven't seen many games set on a cruise ship.
Well, so it's and it's the setting is that kind of 60s retro future. We think of it as retro future now. In the 60s, they thought it was as future.
It's sort of Venture Brothers-y aesthetic wise.
Yeah. There's if you're familiar with No One Lives Forever, the classic, I guess Sierra, maybe, I can't remember, first person shooter, or Space 1999, or Star Trek the original series, or any number of like post Buck Rogers / Flash Gordon pre Star Wars science fiction. We're firmly in the Logan's Run and 2001 era of lots of smooth plastic and clean mid-century modern sci-fi design. It's the place that Chet grew up watching those shows on Saturday afternoon after cartoons before the football game came on. And we were excited about building a game there because, like you said, nobody, it's not your traditional, dystopian sci-fi or orcs and elves sword and fantasy game. So,
awesome. And the setting also reminded, pop culture wise. There's, did you see the Hugh Laurie show Avenue 5? I think it was called.
Yeah, people mentioned that a lot.
Reminded me a lot. Yeah.
It's a similar aesthetic for sure.
But a little more kind of modern, less 70s, and therefore less cool. I mean, let's be honest. So the 70s forever.
Awesome.
Other stuff, Vikas?
Yeah, I think we can move on to the next section here. We're going to talk about the Foo Show and Tested. So, yeah, well, just I think we're Phil and I have been, following this whole spatial computing world for a long time, and the Foo Show came out. I guess, yeah. When
we launched the week that the headsets launched. The first, the Rift CV1 and the Vive launched on each platform. I think we were on Steam. Like I remember literally sending Valve a note on the night at 10 o'clock the night before the Vive arrived at people's doors and was like, hey, I think we're ready. Can you put us through for like Friday or something? Like, we're just going to hit the button. Let us know how it goes. You're live now.
We're live, pal.
And then we were on the Rift the Friday after launch, I think. So it's we were really early. Like, we were one of the first things that was out. The game was free. And the idea behind what we did with the Foo Show was to, like, when I started Foo, I didn't want to build the Foo Show. I wanted to build tools that let us explore storytelling inexpensively, because it's hard to think back to 2015. We didn't know how you were going to tell stories in VR, because it was the first like screen-based entertainment that we'd had, where the creator of the experience or the show or the game or whatever didn't control what the player was looking at in some way, shape, or form. And not only that, but we couldn't take control of that without making people feel sick. So like I was looking at people doing a lot of 360 videos, like 360 video sucks. This isn't gonna go anywhere except for probably pornography and like nature documentaries.
I've seen Strange Days.
Yeah. So we wanted to build a tool that let us iterate quickly and inexpensively on different content types and experiment and all that. And so we needed something to dog food the show. And our friends over at Campo Santo, Jake, Sean Vanneman and Jake Rodkin had given me advice before we started the company. And when I was like, hey, we have this thing ready to go, we can record stuff inside video games. We think we're gonna do it, post it on Steam so we can get feedback and see how people like it.
Yeah.
They were like, hey, why don't you do you want to do Firewatch? I was like, yes, absolutely. I would love to do Firewatch. That would be fabulous. So they handed me a hard drive with like the entire Unity project for Firewatch on it. We went over and like basically it ended up being incredibly lucky because we were using the same version of Unity and all of their shaders for the most part were stereo compatible. So we were able to just take the Xbox 360 game or Xbox One game, I guess, I can't remember, and port it over into the headset because it ran at VR frame rates. And it just kind of worked. It happened in like 2 weeks. It was incredibly fast. And it was magical. Putting on the headset and walking around this thing you'd only experience, like living in a space that you'd only experienced in a video game, was really, really cool.
Yeah, and how what was that? What were some of the? So I guess the inspiration early on was this idea of just a new type of. I guess I mean I think you were I think we talked about this when you're sort of talking around on Friday, but like I think there was like two ways to sort of consider the Foo Show. There's the actual show itself, and then there's the underlying I guess you'd call it platform or application that you guys had to build to like actually make it work and run it. How did you guys think about that early on? Were you thinking of, was it doing the show to dog food the app that you would then sort of put out there to others that would that's how you'd sort of scale it out? Or how were you thinking about that?
So the goal was to always build a tool that we could use to create content. So the part of the thought was, for it tested, we were really good at taking like live and live to tape broadcast techniques to generate a ton of video content on a timeline that was more that was not typically done with produced video content. So we used like live video mixers and stuff like that to do, to turn a 45-minute live stream into a 15-minute YouTube segment, like way before anybody else, or way before most people were thinking about live and YouTube that way. And I looked at what we could do with, in the beginning, IK and some relatively complicated constraints on the models, and looked at, hey, the VR headsets, the VR hardware essentially gives us 3 points of data on a motion tracking rig for like $1,000, right? So it's like, can we use this and some software to turn off the shelf hardware and PCs into something that is essentially a really shitty motion capture rig? And we were able to do that, because the goal was to do. And then what happened, interestingly, was released that we built the Foo Show as dog food to figure out how this worked, whether it was even viable. And then the animation people found it and they were like, hey, how did you do this? We're really curious. And that ended up, two things happened at the same time. One is that like 250,000 people downloaded the Foo Show over the first 6 months it was up, the Firewatch episode, which basically meant like everybody who had a headset watched it at least a few times. The other thing is that the animation people called me and were like, oh, this is maybe, there's probably the animation people, it turns out, have money. The people who have headsets don't buy anything at this point. So so we started doing 2D and 3D animation live, which it turns out it's hard to do that with traditional animation because the animators' hands get really tired as they're drawing those frames so fast. So
real time drawing.
Yeah, real time drawing. It's not, you can't do that at 30 frames a second, it turns out.
Terrible strain
on the wrist.
Yeah, exactly.
That's in the early. How big was the team when you first started out? Was it Like I can't imagine it was a huge team.
So Andre Infante was our lead engineer. Sindra Scar was our technical artist and like primary artist. And then we had some contractors come in to help over the time. Eric Florenzano came in and helped us with the final push. Was a friend of a friend and was interested in learning about VR stuff and came in and was like, "Hey, I can write C code. Can you use me?" And we were like, "Yes, we can use you." And he helped us with getting both the Rift version and the Vive version out. And also we shot the second half of the Firewatch episode in his living room, I think, because he had high ceilings, it turned out, which was important.
Did you guys ever think about? Did you ever consider also just like the? I mean, I guess the animators were reaching out to you around this topic too. But there's obviously like viewing this type of content in VR makes a lot of sense. Like you can sort of use the medium, and you're already generating a scene that's compatible with VR. People can walk around, but like I think there's just the 2D output itself is also fairly compelling, I think, in a lot of ways. And in some ways, in a lot of ways, that's what we're doing at LightTwist is using a 3D game engine to generate 2D video. I'm curious, like, how you thought about that. Like, did you ever explore the path of let's go for 2D video, which is already sort of a big market, focus on just the content creation side, less on the viewing side?
So it turns out that's what almost all of the 2D animation was. So like we worked with Cartoon Network and Adult Swim and some advertisers and stuff like that to do a variety of different campaigns. And the content was all 3D worlds that we built camera tools for. So when we built the first version of the Foo Show with the Firewatch Tower, we didn't have a 2D camera at all. There were a bunch of people took their Fives or their Rifts and held the strap and used it like a camera and shot inside the Firewatch Tower and then posted those videos on YouTube. They're still there. They're really funny because it's like handheld camera inside a video game. It was
kind of jibbing around and
But so for Cartoon Network and Adult Swim, we ended up building a whole series of camera models. We started with like a basic drone camera controlled by like you would two sticks and a gamepad basically. We built some shoulder-mounted camera rigs. We built a jib for an Adult Swim live show that we did. Basically, each project we tried to get somebody to pay us to build out the technology more. Right, was the goal, and eventually we got all the way to as many points of data as you wanted to add. So we could go up to like a IMU suit and
input in. That's cool.
Yeah. So we could do we started with 3 points of data. Very quickly, it became clear that 3 points of data was not enough to do anything that was close to production quality. But we were able to add the system we built was extensible. We added machine learning to kind of keep the IK in control. We added face tracking with the iOS AR kit, face tracking stuff.
That's cool.
And eventually we got to a point where we were able to have like a voice actor sitting in front of an iPhone performing their lines while there was an emotion actor live puppeting a body. And we could pipe all that out to YouTube just with the normal video pipeline. So we were able to do like 2D animation that was like a little bit of a premium over live humans, but it wasn't that much if when we did a 30 episode show on Adult Swim that was every Wednesday night. And like the cost wasn't ridiculous for 30 minutes of animation every Wednesday night. It was, I don't remember specifics, but everybody was happy with how that ended up working out. So
that's awesome. What do you think the Foo Show got really right?
The thing that we did really well was you felt like you were part of the conversation. Like if you were watching the Foo Show in the VR headset, especially, we did stuff like, we did all the things that you didn't realize in the beginning were important. Like we had saccades on the eyes so that the eyes aren't just dead staring off into space and you feel like they're not looking at anything. We added a system that let us have points of interest. So when you would pick up an object, like if I picked up an object during the recording and you're watching me, that object in my hand is the most interesting thing in the world, in the room to me. So my eyes track it as long as it's in my field of view. But then also the camera for the viewer was interesting. So if the camera moves across my field of vision or Sean's field of vision, then their eyes track it too. And it feels like you're like little tiny things like that make it feel like you're part of the conversation. We also made all of the objects in the tower interactable, which was, it turns out, a huge deal for people's just engagement with the world,
for real immersion. Yeah.
So they like pick up something while they're, I guess that sort of adds to the feeling of being part of that show if you're able to pick up something and sort of grab it off the desk while you're, that's interesting.
Yeah, well, and you can see like the back faces and stuff like that, but also the other thing is when you put on the VR headset, and this is something that we kind of figured out immediately, but I think a lot of people took a little bit longer to get, is, and honestly, it's why like 360 video fails in headsets, is that like if I'm sitting watching TV and it's not the best TV show I've seen that year, I probably also have my phone out and I'm playing solitaire, looking at Twitter, or, shit posting on Discord or something. And you have to, there's a high bar for level of attention required for viewers. And if you don't meet that, then they're just going to take the headset off and go do something else. So giving them things to interact with and letting them pick up things and letting them walk around, letting them walk through the walls, letting them break the rules of the world, right? Like we let the viewer, we instrumented the whole thing so we could tell what was going on. So like something like 30% of people never walked through the center console in the middle of the tower and never walked through the walls. But the other 70% of people were out standing over space outside the tower, looking at through everything, the back planes and the whole thing. So it's a and I can't remember what the number was, but I think it was like 90 people are hitting like 90 objects every minute, like just grabbing them, because we let you force pull them over to you, hold them, look at them in your hand, and then they zoom like back.
Yeah. Oh, that's cool. That's cool.
Yeah.
Clever.
That's awesome.
Yeah. It's a good way to get around having the chaos of, all of a sudden there's infinity collisions happening.
Yeah.
You kind of, yeah.
And then the version where we put colliders on everything and you could grab them, and when you let go, they drop and then just pile up, quickly filled the tower with, it might not have been that episode. It might've been the Quadrilateral Cowboy episode, but one of them we did that for in the beginning, and it was a disaster. Cause like 5 minutes in, it was just, it was like you were in the middle of a dump. Yeah.
Often when you're building something new, things come up that are, one, unexpected, and a lot of people that have never sort of gone through that experience never sort of think about. But the early days of almost anything new, startups, like shows, everything else is always crazy. So any crazy stories from the Foo Show where you're like, yeah, we had to do this kind of insane thing to make something work?
Well, so we had like, there's boring stuff like audio video sync, which is always a problem that at first we just fixed by eyeballing it. Now, the nice thing about doing it in VR was that our lip flap for the models was based on the sound that played through. So like you could change the like I could change the dialogue and the lip flap on the recording just by recording new video. I think the most profound thing for me was that the team was virtual. So like my lead engineer was in New Mexico, and I hadn't met him in person until we'd worked together for almost a year and a half, 2 years. So we went to do the second episode of the show, of the Foo Show, live on stage at XOXO, which was amazing opportunity that Andy Bio and Andy McMillan gave us to come up and be part of their festival.
Just pause for a moment to huge love and shout out to XOXO. I miss it so much. Hopefully we will be able to do that thing again. We love you, Andy and Andy.
Yeah, the Andys continue to rule. But so first off, we did it on a stage live, which means you're walking around with blindfold on a stage that's 8 feet off the ground in front of like 2,000 people. So like your chaperone boundaries were real important there. You didn't want to accidentally walk off the front of the stage.
Jeez.
But the other thing,
think of the press though. I mean,
yeah, we killed Brendan Chung. The other thing though was that like I met Andre for the first time, and we'd been doing stand-ups inside the studio for a year at that point. So we'd get up in the morning, put the headset on, talk to each other, figure out what we were doing that day, and then take the headset off. And of course, we're all using my avatar because I think it's the only one we had at the time. But when I met Andre in person, I knew his body language because our model pulled enough of like his shoulder movements and his hand movements and his head tilts and all that awesome. Through. That's that cool. Like my brain was like, oh, I know you. You're that guy, even without knowing what he looked like. So
you're the me that moves slightly differently.
Well, that one, and then the other thing was, like, I think like Jake and Sean, when we first set out to record, the first time they saw the inside of the tower was when we were recording the interview with them.
Oh wow!
And I mean, they'd seen it obviously in the game and they'd been working on it for a period of like 4 years, but like there was a profound moment that unfortunately we weren't recording for when they put the headset on and we're just like, oh my God, this feels like a real place. This is incredible. Why do people not do this for every game that they make? Because this is like this place is profoundly important to me as a creator, and it was a lovely moment.
That's awesome. Yeah, I can imagine. Yeah,
Well,
I think
the Campo team is, was some of the best folks in game dev. I'm lucky enough to be friends with a couple of them, and yeah, just what an elegantly crafted little thing Firewatch was.
Yeah.
So
well, thanks. Yeah, I think we can switch over to the present. I think we're going to talk a little bit about here. I'll pull up a little the recent leak from Meta. So here's the leak from the leaked box, which was, I don't know, where was this one left? I guess this was left at
supposedly in a hotel.
Oh, hotel room.
That's what I'm hearing.
This all seems pretty unlikely. Like the phone thing, I could see leaving your phone at a bar by accident. How do you leave a boxed Quest prototype at a hotel?
Totally agree, and I'm calling. Yeah, this is, to use a pro wrestling / current term, this is absolutely a work. There's no way this is.
You think this is like a leak to? They're just testing the market.
This is total kayfabe. Yeah, this is total kayfabe shit. Like, there's no way, man. Like, seriously. Number one, how do you leave this behind? Number two, the person that somehow gets access to it is a famous Meta streamer. Like,
what a weird coincidence.
That's
true.
What are the odds?
Well,
okay.
So I mean that thing, the second part of that is less likely, because like is more likely because somebody's like, oh, what do I do with this thing? How's it gonna benefit me? And they'll find somebody who's willing to pay for the content or whatever. I don't get how you leave the hardware in the hotel room. That seems like such an egregious mistake for somebody who spent a lot of time working on this, presumably.
Yeah, it's not exactly a small box. Yeah, it's not a phone. It's like it's like this big.
Yeah.
So yeah,
we're not talking about something like unimportant, like a dog or a kid. This is a headset. I mean, this is really, really important stuff.
It's corporate secrets, man.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I mean, what are your thoughts on, like, you've obviously been in the VR space for longer than basically most. Even it hasn't been around that long, I guess, in this recent iteration. But like, yeah, how what's your thoughts on this? Both on like Meta's approach, where they've effectively rebranded and they're trying to kind of push themselves into this whole metaverse play, and they've obviously invested billions and billions of dollars, not just on the headsets, the hardware side, but like they have one of the biggest computer vision teams out there working on various aspects of perception. They've just been investing a lot of time and dollars and money into this. And so how do you see them progressing over the next like 5 to 10 years, and compared to like what Valve's doing with the Index and what Apple's like rumored play in the space? Obviously they're working on something, but people aren't sure what yet. But how do you see this all evolving out?
Well, so I mean, like realistically, I think that they tapped into something that is important with the standalone headset using the mobile hardware, so that you have a self-contained box you put on your head, and like it's easy for everybody to use. You don't have to hook up to a big PC. There's no wires. There's no external cameras or lighthouses or whatever your thing is. I fundamentally don't like Facebook.
Yeah.
Like same team.
Yeah, I wish it was somebody else. I hope that somebody else comes out with a competitor that lives in that space. I look at what Valve is doing with AMD's APUs on the Steam Deck, and like whether it's a Steam Deck thing or eventually the APUs get low power enough that we see x86 processors in a similar type of form factor. I'm hopeful that somebody else comes in to challenge them. Because like there's a weird there's a weird kind of nightmarish mix with the Meta thing of like, hey, we want to corporatize. Okay, so first off, we all agree that the idea of the metaverse as presented by Facebook and or Epic and or the crypto bros kind of bullshit, right?
More than kind of,
yeah. I mean, best case, it's kind of bullshit. The worst case is it's actual. Anyway, yeah. But like, so I play a lot of Fortnite. I kind of like the post brand nightmare that is Fortnite, right? Like
Goku with a gun.
Yeah,
Goku with a gun.
The other day I was Vegeta and I killed a stormtrooper and Lara Croft and John Wick, and like, I don't know, man, that felt okay. That was real stupid, and I kind of appreciate the insanity of the whole thing.
Something you could have done in Second Life, just within much lower fidelity and unofficial branding.
Well, yeah, and like somehow, despite having all of the branding stuff and having and like them having Disney and Warner Brothers stuff and like all these other brands across, they somehow managed to maintain a cohesive art style that's compelling. Like it's probably not for everyone, but it looks designed and it doesn't offend me. And then I go to like Horizons and I'm like, oh man, this is rough. And I know that there's a lot of really smart people working on Horizons. Like I'm friends with a lot of them. Like they're talented folks, and it just is like this nightmare milquetoast thing with bad animation and like we literally had a team of 3 people and we solved the bendy wrist problem that you saw in the Neil deGrasse Tyson thing a few weeks ago. Like I can't make my wrist bend the way that they failed on when he was holding the controllers just a tiny bit wrong.
Yeah.
So.
Oh, sorry. Good.
No, I just wish it was anybody but Facebook doing this work. Honestly, is where I land.
Yeah, I think I guess there's 2 aspects. There's like the, will they do something compelling? And then I guess, there's like there's the question of like, should, even if they do you want them to be the ones that own it? But because like they've, from a hardware, I think you're right. From a hardware perspective, they've done the best job. And part of that's because they're heavily subsidizing the headsets. They're certainly losing money per headset, even still. I think
the price increase,
even with the pricing increase. But then, and even on top of that, they're certainly not amortizing all of their costs from like a development perspective. Like,
would it even be possible to at this point, like with the sheer number of dollars and people we're talking?
But it's like, this is like the Microsoft thing, right? Like Microsoft spent billions and billions of dollars on the first 2 generations of Xboxes, and then all of a sudden, they're making money and they have a presence in the living room, which was really the ultimate goal there, right?
Mm-hmm.
Right.
I mean, Zuckerberg's bet is that this is the future of computing, that spatial computing is the future of computing, and that they're in on the ground floor, and that's why 40% of the Facebook workforce is working in this space or something now. I don't know what the public. I don't know if they have a public number even.
Yeah. And to be fair, like it's justified in the sense that if they can pull off, to me, there's this like sort of binary question or this sort of binary moment where it's like, can I put on a headset that's relatively comfortable and I can wear for at least an hour or 2, and it feels, 80 to 90% as good as like being in the same room with like my friend that's like, or my cousin that lives in Seattle, right? Like, there's that moment where like, if they pull that off, and then it's like, okay, well, that's worth like $1 trillion by itself. Like they could charge, however they want to make money off that, they'll figure it out. And so I think like looking at their, they are working on some of those, some pretty incredible things around their computer vision team, like the avatars that are incredibly photorealistic and are, they're sort of like leaps and bounds beyond obviously what they showed with the Zuckerberg selfie,
the infamous Paris selfie. We'll refer to that decades from now as the Eiffel Tower selfie.
Yeah, the Eiffel Tower selfie. Yeah. So yeah, I mean, it'll be interesting to see how but I think there's this interesting challenge for them, I think now, which is they're getting hammered by like Wall Street for like their their stock price and stuff. They're a public company, and so like I wonder if Zuckerberg could wave a magic wand and be like, look, I'd rather just like not talk about the metaverse for like 5 years and come back in 5 years with like, maybe still keep pushing forward on, VR hardware and stuff, but like don't sort of make it this big sort of metaverse-y play until we're sort of ready. But I wonder if they can't afford to do that, because like investors are going to be like, why are you spending, $100 billion per year on this? Like, it's probably not that much, but on this, why is 40% of your workforce working on this thing that's not making you any money yet?
Yeah.
So well, that's part of it.
And I like to me, the shift from Facebook to Meta, like the rebrand was partly, I think it was partly to justify the incredible amount of money they spent on it. But I think also, if you recall, it was when they were having, like, there were congressional hearings coming up, and they
Cambridge
needed to,
Analytica.
Yeah, true.
right. So they needed to like, they needed to push that news out of the way, and like, that's a Facebook problem. This is the world of Meta. But like to me, the fundamental problem, and this is something they can get through, but the fundamental problem right now is that they've made this whole idea of, hey, here's a space where you can get in and participate with your friends and have a social experience. Like, VR chat is weird and awesome and kind of janky and scary, frankly, for a lot of people.
Sort of like Second Life-ish.
Yeah. But like the version that they're showing is just profoundly uncool. Like, it is the least cool
and uninteresting.
Right. It's like they get in and they talk about this, like the James Webb Telescope thing is a perfect example, because like, it is a miracle of technology. We've spent billions of dollars over 25 years putting this thing together so we can see to the beginning of time, and they made it look boring and like the VR portion, like the virtual portion of that, adds absolutely nothing for the viewer, which is one of the core things we realized with Foo, is that if you're going to take people and say, hey, put on the headset to do this, you have to give them something compelling to do with that time, or else you're wasting their time, and they can just watch it on a 2D screen. So I don't know.
There has to be something additive. I think you're 100% right there. There's so much of the stuff that they're doing is purely because they feel like they can or they have to. You know,
I think it's the latter. I think it's almost like they have to, because it like. I can't imagine the teams are, there's a lot of smart people at Facebook. Obviously, Zucker, you could be, you could question his, ethics or whatever else, but he's not a dumb person.
He might need to get back to his core competency of building software to rate the attractiveness of his female co-eds. So
that's his core. Yeah,
that could be the issue here.
Well, one on the hardware side, I'm actually curious to just get your, opinion, Will, is like, I've always wondered, how do you see the hardware itself evolving in the space of VR? Like, I guess maybe we can focus on VR versus AR. I mean, it's somewhat of a continuum, but like, how do you see, like, what are the things you see, or if you were to sort of predict out over the next couple of years, like, what are the things that you see happening in the VR hardware side?
I mean, I think we've reached a point where fidelity on the VR hardware is pretty good, right? We're at a place where even on the Quest 1, honestly, the Quest 2 is they're really nice pieces of hardware, especially for your $400 or $500. Doing a price increase remains one of the ballsiest moves I've ever seen from a consumer hardware company, but whatever. The big thing to me is controls, right? So like I think the folks at Valve with the Index controllers really did a huge leap forward in terms of like your finger fidelity.
They're very good.
But also like I think we're reaching a point where people are figuring out the interfaces, and we're going to see more. Hey, this is the interface for this is like, we can just do hands for this, right? The front facing cameras, the hand tracking is pretty good for lo-fi stuff. And it's kind of like the difference between mobile games and like a console game. So like, sometimes you want the precision of a gamepad or a mouse and keyboard, but like if you're playing Temple Run or something that is like, there's a lot of games you can play just by tapping and have a pleasant experience. So I think controls, I honestly, the market is still small enough that I don't think anything's locked in, even with Facebook spending billions and billions of dollars every year. Like somebody comes out with something that's good and the right price. The one advantage that Facebook has is that they can subsidize everything. Right now, that eventually backfires on them, as it did when they stopped subsidizing the kind of traditional games market, and they kind of tanked the entire VR games industry because they built up expectations that there were these highly produced double and triple A games coming out. Consumers came to expect the highly produced double and triple A games coming out of Oculus that they were fully subsidizing and funding. And now those games don't exist, and people are like, hey, where the hell are all the games?
Because there was that huge, like a bunch of crazy high produced stuff came out, like 3 or 4 years ago, and then stopped.
Insomniac built a bunch of VR games. There was a real flood of content. Sony's doing a little bit of that with the PSVR and PSVR 2, but I mean, it's still that's a tough place to be when there's not enough hardware in the market to sustain. Like, you can't make a $40 million game when there's only 10 million headsets on the market.
Yeah,
Right?
yeah,
Right.
exactly.
Right.
Yeah.
I mean, do you think if you look at like some of the rumors around Apple, like what's your thinking about like what they're gonna come out with? Like, what's where would you start if you were Apple, or putting yourself in their shoes?
I mean, I look at what they've done with the AirPods, from the AirPods to the AirPods Pro, and
Yeah.
I think about how I use like, I often leave headphones, my AirPod Pros, in the transparency mode, just because it's easier to leave them in than it is to take them on and off when I'm listening to music or listening to a podcast or something and walking around my house.
Same.
And like, I never would have imagined that 5 years ago. So I think if they do something that is going to take over a large portion of, like just to be clear, for most people, your vision is your favorite sense, right? It's the one,
Right.
It's the one that is most important to you. We have a massive number of neurons connected to our eyes. Like, it is profoundly important to our day-to-day life to be able to see. And if you take that away from people, or you impede that, or overlay that, even, like, it's a big commitment from both the experience creator, the hardware creator, everyone. And I think if they're going to do something, it's going to be more or less transparent, in the same way that the AirPods in your transparency mode when you're walking around the house and talking to your spouse and kids and dog and whatever are. So I would expect something light and probably lower fidelity than we've come to expect from stuff like Oculus and the Vive and the Index and all that.
Yeah, if they do like an AR play, I could see something where they, and they've shown like, I could see, the other direction I could see them going is maybe the, building it as a sort of alternate screen, and that would take it more in sort of I guess more of a VR direction than necessarily like a AR sort of see-through path. But yeah, I'll be interested to see how that evolves.
Look, I would love to sit down at my desk and put on a pair of glasses and have my wall of monitors be an invisible wall of monitors rather than a series of, like, I have a huge nightmarish complexity of arms and booms and stuff like that in front of me. So, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and actually, I will say one of the things that's kind of interesting there is, like, I found the Quest 2 is like, it's an amazing piece of hardware. It's, and the fact that they made 6-off tracking work on it, it's all self-contained, but weirdly, one disadvantage it has, because it's not plugged into my laptop, like whenever, like, so I tried to use the Horizon Workrooms, and it's actually a decently built app, but the overhead of like going from like me looking at my desk and my usual monitor to like being in VR and like pulling up the same sort of stuff is like, it takes like 10 minutes, it felt like, which is like insane. That would be like if it takes me like 1 minute to get into a Zoom call, I'm like already frustrated. And so it's like the 10-minute overhead. So there might be, I do wonder if there'll be some more headsets that come out, whether it's Apple or others, that will, and I guess, the Index is already like this too, although it's obviously PC focused right now, like having in some ways powering it off of the laptop somehow, or having like a strong connection or tight integration with like a laptop would enable you to just sort of go in and out quicker. Because I think that's a
sort of like
right handoff,
sort of like handoff mode with. I think Apple again.
Yeah, actually, like continuity mode.
They're uniquely. I think they're uniquely positioned, and I think Apple is showing us what they're doing, just in a kind of the slow drip way Apple does. I think the biggest things here are the spatial audio and positional tracking with the headphones and your watch, and maybe even your phone. But also, I think people forget a lot about the Taptic engine, the tech, the time that Apple has spent making nice little buzzes and vibrations. That's, I think, what is going to be the thing that makes it so you can just use your hands in a lot of these instances, because otherwise it doesn't feel right. Like you're not actually grabbing something, even if it's just a simple, like, your finger, like your hand or wrist buzzes when you are interacting with something, like that's a huge part of this story. And I don't think it will be good enough until we get to that point. Yeah. And I think Apple has got all that stuff squared away. They've got the best screens, they've got the best audio, they've got the best, buzzes and beeps and whatnot, and also some of the best accessibility practices in the industry, if not the best.
Yeah.
And so I think that's I think they're telling us what they're doing, but they haven't showed it to us yet.
Well,
Yeah.
And then the other big one is that the Wi-Fi 6 stuff is giving you enough bandwidth to actually do video at a high refresh rate across your network. So I think we'll see more like not just video, but like broadcast whole screens and the entire thing across your
Oh
network.
yeah, local. So. Yeah, sort of like getting a screen in from like your laptop or even if it's rendered elsewhere, you can pull 4K. It into your headset or something. Yeah, that's interesting. Will, you're probably one of the best people in terms of your background and experience, like to talk about, which is how do you see both like I guess we'll start both podcasts and indie video content, indie I guess it could be VR AR content. What are some things you see happening over the next like 5 to 10 years in that space?
I mean, I think it's one of those interesting places where if you're an established creator, there's really never been a better time to be an indie creator than it is right now. I mean, even we're starting to see like a diaspora of companies that have come out post Patreon and post Kickstarter and have made it easier for indie creators to make money and do their thing and make it their job, right, rather than just a hobby. At the same time, like first mover advantage is real, and like the folks that are on Substack first, or the folks that were on Twitch 10 years ago, the folks that were on YouTube 15 years ago, like those platforms are essentially dead to new creators, right? You have to jump out and get in, because it's really hard to beat the network effect if you don't already have an established audience.
Unless you're bringing them with you,
in that regard, it's hard, and honestly, even like bringing an audience from YouTube to Twitch is challenging, right? Like people like to live, people find their silos and they like to live in their networks, and then that's where they stay. I mean, the advice I give people who are starting out is always the same. It's like, don't incur debt if you don't have to.
It's very good advice.
Because it turns out if you don't owe a lot of money, then you have a lot more options going forward. Between the fall of Western democracy, the decline of Western democracy, and the climate disasters that we're living in right now, like it's almost impossible, I think, to predict what's going to happen in 5 years, 2 years, much less 5 years. Like if I were starting out today, I would not probably focus on indie content creation at all, and I would be looking at climate stuff, because I think there's going to be massive opportunities. And
there sort of are like climate influencers out there, and I wonder how that can eventually become a bigger part of the story, where I mean, you've got like Greta Thunberg, right? Like, but who else? Who else is out there?
Well, a lot of the van life people, it turns out, it kind of turned into accidental environmentalists, because they're like, oh, it turns out we should probably try to keep this stuff. This is nice. We like, it's good out here.
Hashtag van life.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I think there's probably, I do think there's like interesting opportunities from I was like thinking about like indie content, or just just videos and various things that people are creating these days. It's in some ways it's like it can be upstream of even action. Like if you get enough like mind share around whether it's climate change or even other issues, I think it's often preceded by enough of sort of a wave of like discussion and even like I'd say like content creation, or just people putting out ideas about how we could live better, or like how we could do something, how we could approach a problem in a different way. And so I think that might be an interesting area where there's maybe I can see there being more and more people that are sort of helping drive more urgency around climate tech and climate change.
You got to shift that Overton window,
exactly.
Yeah, it's all about communication, right? All of that stuff is about communication, because it's the media landscape is a nightmare now, right? Everybody has a voice. We've all used it to argue about things on the internet, and you have to instead of everybody in your small town reading the same newspaper every morning, now everybody reads their favorite morning personality, whether that's somebody who's talking about Roblox, or the local news on the peninsula in San Francisco, or fighting fascism in the 21st century, and there remains an opportunity, I think, for it's an important role to play, right?
Absolutely.
Awesome. Well, thanks so much, Will. This is
more.
it's been amazing to have you on, and really appreciate you taking the time to join us today.
Well, it's great to do it. I love the technology you all built here. This is really cool. We were it turns out not having to build a 3D rigged model for every single guest probably reduces your cost pretty substantially, I would bet, on a episode to episode show.
But you haven't seen my writer, so
yeah.
Yeah,
Phil's it's crazy list there. Thanks again, Will, for joining us on the show. So take care of yourself, take care of each other. Phil, any last words?
Yeah, have a great week wherever you may be out there. We will see you next time live on Tuesday and with the episode coming out on Thursday, wherever you find fine video content.
I guess I don't know if we left the player on.
Still in there.
Oh yeah, we got the first there.
I think this is becoming like the Batman trophy case where we've got the moose, we've got the flames.
I wondered if your house was on fire, Phil, or if the smoke was added in post. So I'm glad it wasn't your smoke.